And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 352 of This Old Marketing for December 1st. 2022, December 1st. Can you believe it? It's already here. And with me, as always, my good friend, my colleague, and let's be honest, the only guy who doesn't believe that Bob Iger won't sell Disney to Apple, Mr. Joe Polizzi.
You know, just because there's been news released this week on that very topic doesn't mean that I'm wrong.
It doesn't mean you're right either.
For those people that... Do we even have to talk about it? Because...
No, we don't. We definitely don't. I mean, although the Twitterverse, even though I'm not on Twitter anymore, I'm actually monitoring Twitter because there are so many wonderful, kind people who are doing things like giving us shout outs. I don't know if you've seen, by the way, all the people sharing their Spotify wrap up.
Isn't that something?
And how many podcasts, how many lists we're on for people that are sharing this stuff.
First of all, it's been shared all over the place. I've seen it on Facebook and LinkedIn, and they do here's what the concerts, all this stuff is crazy. And first of all, brilliant move to do that, to create shareable image.
Such smart marketing.
Because people want us. This is what people stand for. This is what I listen to. And I don't listen to Spotify, but I was thinking about what mine would be. Mine would be like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Limp Bizkit, and Barry Manilow. Like, it would be something so odd.
Well, that was mine. So I did mine. I didn't share it on social media, but I did mine. And my number one artist was Kate Bush, followed by Duran Duran, followed by it was Willie Nelson, and then followed by like some other 80s band, the band that did
Flock of Seagulls.
Gosh, what the heck is their name?
The Cure.
Life in a Northern Town. You remember that song?
Yes, I don't know the name of the group.
Yeah,
some obscure...
and it was basically my genres were 80s music, and they called it new wave, of course. New wave, country, and then like new age music, because I listen to a lot of these. Like while I'm working, there are these they're called binaural beats, which is just like tones to tune your brain to focus and stuff.
Really?
And I listen to that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So let me ask you this about Kate Bush. Were you listening to Kate Bush before Stranger Things came out and made it?
Oh my gosh, yes. I've been a fan since 1980.
I didn't know if you were just listening to Running Up That Hill on replay.
God, no.
Which, by the way,
in fact, that's probably the last song I would listen to of hers. I mean,
But it's odd. If you go into any hot topic in any mall around the country, they are playing Running Up That Hill. I mean, it's fascinating to me.
It's huge.
That
it was lovely to see her get the recognition after all these years, because she's definitely a niche artist. But I will tell you, people who are fans of Kate Bush are passionate about Kate Bush. I mean, it's not like casual. You don't have a lot of casual Kate Bush fans. Let's put it that way.
So back to your, let's just wrap up this thing. We probably won't have to talk about it for a few episodes, but last episode, since Bob Iger's taking over again at Disney, I again came back with this conspiracy theory that Apple would be purchasing Disney at some point, because it was, there was some notion that Bob Iger and Steve Jobs had a conversation about this in the past. Well, there was an article in the LA Times that came out, which fake news, any LA publication, fake news right off the bat, said that 100%. That apparently somebody asked Bob Iger his first day in office whether or not there was some truth to this, and Bob Iger said pure speculation. Now, you have to take that with a grain of salt, because there's been a lot of M&A deals that have happened from pure speculation. But from what we know right now, it seems like a long shot.
I just don't. Here's the take away all the financial, economic arguments for a moment. To me, I buy the argument that Iger was bored and felt like it wasn't getting done properly. The management of Disney wasn't getting done properly. This, by the way, to your excellent point on the last episode, when you go back and look at the history of Disney, this has happened 3, 4, 5 times in the history.
They just do this as a culture.
They just do this, but it's usually because the old CEO looks at the new CEO and goes, "You're not doing it right. Let me come in and fix it." And the board goes, "Oh yeah, cool. Let's do that." And so, to me, he wants to set a legacy here. He wants to go out on a high note. And I don't think that he would see the high note being selling the company off to a bigger organ. I just don't see that as him wanting that to be his legacy. I would see his legacy wanting to be like he did something big, like break up the company or, make it, turn it into a profit machine, whatever. It's some big thing that he can go, "That's my feather in my cap, and now I'm riding off into the sunset."
I totally can see where you're going with that, because it is sort of like a wah, wah, if he just comes in and sells and makes all the shareholders a lot of money.
It kind of ruins his whole thing, right? I mean, it ruins it not ruins, but it would basically be him coming in to end Disney, basically. And I don't think he wants that to be his, like the last CEO of Disney is Bob Iger, and then he sold it.
I don't know. I see where
thing.
you're going. I don't think that would ever happen, because the Disney brand is so strong. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's independent or not. It's just like Star Wars and Marvel continue on, even though they're owned. You could
right. But who's the CEO of Marvel? Right? There isn't one really. I mean, there's a general manager that may have the title of chief something or other, but basically they report up to the
Ms. Marvel.
They report up to the larger company.
Ms. Marvel is the
Ms. Marvel. There you go.
And then C-3PO runs Star Wars. Something. By the way, we're all over on tangents here. I did start Andor based on your recommendation. But God. I have to watch it with Adam, my youngest, and we only were able to watch one episode. But we're gonna watch it during break. So I'm gonna get to it.
Okay. So here's the thing. Here's my recommendation for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you walked out of the first episode going, "That's what everybody's."
No. I already knew. You already told me to basically get to episode 3, 4, and it'll really start to churn.
Correct. Make a date for you and the kid, and sit down and watch 2, 3, and 4 like as a binge. Like it'll be like watching a movie.
Yeah.
And so watch that as a movie and get through 4, and then you're in. I guarantee it.
Okay, I will absolutely do that. So, anyways, we're gonna stop talking about the Disney thing for a while. I just want to mention this because I've been so down. I actually talked with somebody yesterday that said, "I love your podcast with Robert, but please enough with the football." So here I'm going to talk about football here for a second. I was at that. I was at the game.
That's not stopping.
It's
right?
not going to stop.
We just know that's not from October through January. There's going to be
football. I have to tell you, it doesn't happen very often. But I was at the game. I was right in front of the tying touchdown. They played the Buccaneers. They did Brady.
Great game.
It was 4th and 10. And David Njoku caught a one-handed grab in the end zone to tie it up. It was amazing. I've seen that happen against the Browns 100 times, and I've never really seen the Browns do it. It was amazing to be part of that. So
it was a wonderful game. I was very pleased for you and the Browns.
A good send-off for Jacoby Brissett, who seems like a really nice person, who probably will never play again.
Let him lose his job. This is hurt. I mean, it's the Browns thing of all Browns things, but he's earned that job. They should just sit him until not sit Brissett, sit
Watson.
What's his name?
Even though they paid him $230 million.
Yes, you should sit him for the rest of the season. Let him practice. Let him get back and warmed up. Whatever you're going to do, sit him the rest of the season. Brissett has more than earned that starting position and can do. I mean, look. This is not a championship team. Let's be honest. But Brissett has more than earned that starting position. Use it to get him amazing and whatever record is going to be, maybe into the playoffs. There's still a shot for that. And then sit that, the other one until the next year. Anyway.
I think that,
coaching for the Browns
Jacoby has had a great year for Jacoby. But I was talking to my friend Jim about this.
He's got a ceiling for sure.
I was talking to my friend Jim about this. And because I was saying, Jacoby deserves, like what you're saying, deserves a shot. Really, really good. But Jim said, and I totally agree with this, he said 2 plays. It's always 2 plays a game. It's 2 plays he doesn't make, or 2 mistakes, big mistakes that we can't afford, and we end up losing the game.
He's not an elite quarterback, for sure.
That's where
there's no doubt about it. But the team isn't elite this year.
We don't know that. We don't know. I mean, the defense last week was amazing. If you get different, you don't know if you're in different circumstances.
Well, fair enough. All right, fair enough.
I don't know
if
they're
try.
When they keep the defense on the field so much, every team gets wrecked. So I don't know. Who knows? It was just fun to enjoy that.
Yeah, it was really good.
I almost felt like a Dallas Cowboys fan for just 1 second.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
My team is doing fairly well, yes.
You're doing a good job. So
thank you.
All right, so what do we got?
We got a show. Yeah, we got a show. We're going to talk more about the, shitstorm would be the way to describe it. Dumpster fire?
Dumpster fire is a good one.
Of Twitter. Just a few other developments that have happened since we, talked about it at some length last week, but a new breaking article that just came out. They actually are trying to write blog posts now, and we'll talk a little bit about that, about, where things are with that. Post News, a new Twitter alternative that I'm seeing a lot of folks in our sort of friends and family sign up for, gets big funding, and we'll talk about the viability of the new Twitter alternative to talk about news on social media. And then we'll talk a little bit more about social media with Pinterest and how they have now ended their creator rewards program. And does this portend the things of larger things to come? I am going to then rant a little bit. I guess it's more commentary than a rant on a new media company, really a production company being started by Ben Affleck and a number of other artists that are looking to make content creators out of all of them. And then Joe, you're going to talk a little bit about, what is it you're going to talk about?
I just wrote my 100th newsletter.
Oh, that's right.
Of the Random.
And
we're going to do something real special.
Yes, you're very, very good.
We're going to do something real special. It's interactive. You're involved. And I'm going to read a little snippet. But I don't know which part because it's really up to you. So that's where I'm.
Oh, all right.
This is very, very exciting.
Well, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's jump into it and get to it. And so we're going to pair like 3 stories together and talk about Twitter because there's a lot, as it were, going on with the social network. The headline, which of course is being covered by a number of mainstream media outlets, but we're going to link to the Ad Age article, which is that Twitter analytics staff has been decimated by layoffs and resignations. The departure raises questions about whether the platform can actually track audiences and brand safety. You're going to notice a theme here about the brand challenges here. Layoffs and resignations, says the article, including a wave over Thanksgiving weekend, have decimated the insights and analytics team at Twitter, according to people familiar with the matter, leaving questions about who's still around to handle audience measurement and brand safety issues. The departures are among thousands that have reduced Twitter's workforce by more than half since Elon Musk took control of the social platform last month. That is coupled with a story that we will cover and link to from the International News Media Association, the INMA. And basically, they're talking about the Twitter verification reboot, as it were, which has happened over the last week. This crisis, as it says, puts brands, not necessarily traffic, at risk. That article opens up by saying the ongoing dumpster fire, well, there they called it, since Elon Musk took over at Twitter has exposed leading brands, including some news publishers, to the risk of serious brand damage. However, several senior editors told me, this meaning the author of this article, that they're less worried about the damage to the traffic since Twitter while immensely popular with journalists and a big source of breaking news, was relatively insignificant as a contributor to digital engagement. Twitter is a platform in flux, with many leaving for alternatives, and we get an infinitesimal amount of traffic from it, said one North American news leader. And basically, the article there basically says the risks to brand are significant, with major brands finding imposters that are now verified as real with the blue badge and a white tick on Twitter since Musk took over. And they have since rebooted that whole thing, and we can talk about that. And then last but not least, and this is like chef's kiss, beautiful, wonderful, Mashable has just released an article. This is definitely a must read. The headline of the article, literally breaking as we're recording this, Twitter has released a bunch of spin about its ongoing Elon Musk-led garbage fire, says the headline of the Mashable article. And I just have to read the first paragraph here because it's so wonderful. The article opens up by saying, Twitter has published a blog post, and because I'm a tech reporter cursed with the ability to understand English, I have to read it. Unsurprisingly, it is filled with empty platitudes that in no way reflect the well-reported reality of the current situation at Twitter. And it goes on to talk more about that garbage fire that is Twitter right now. And the blog post itself is entitled Twitter 2.0, Our Continued Commitment to the Public Conversation by Twitter. And it goes on to talk about how it's the town square of the internet, and we've always understood that we have to give everybody the power to create and share ideas, and blah, blah, blah. A lot of PR talk here, which is strange because I thought all the PR people were gone. So it's written by someone. I don't know who, certainly not Elon, but yeah, what do you think about all this? I mean, the news continues to roll.
I can understand why brands are concerned. Obviously, your approach to take a pause is probably what most brands are doing, because brands need predictability and consistency, and they're not getting any of that at Twitter right now, because it's almost like, I mean, you've been a part of a couple of these launches where you do a beta test and you do a close, you do like an alpha and then a beta or a closed beta or whatever, where you're making these changes in front of a small group of people, and then you can get feedback and then quickly iterate, and then that's how software gets created today. But they're doing this with 200 million people on the platform and making these changes ad hoc, depending on how Elon is feeling during the day. And that's why you're seeing all this. And I think it's scary and I know they're changing the new verification program, but what happened to Eli Lilly, and I think there was another one, Northrop Grumman was another one that they did the fake verification check mark, and all, heck broke loose with that one. So there's some big concerns that I don't think Elon thought would be an issue, but here we are. Now, I'm going to take the flip side on this one. If you are not one of those brands that are venerable, that have been around forever, that you really care about how these things affect you, and you're a small company, because there's theoretically less people creating content like you, Robert, you could have an opportunity right now if you believe that Twitter is here to stay. And you get a little bit more of that share of attention, because a lot of people have dropped back. Because there's everybody, like you are, everybody's still watching. We still want to view the dumpster fire. We still want to see what happens. So I think there might be an opportunity there.
Well, it's interesting, because I actually talked a little bit about that this week in my weekly post, which is finding your niche audience within the noise, right? So when things are really popular and the mob is outside, there is an opportunity to go out into the mob, and instead of trying to feed the mob with more popular content, you can actually find your niche audience in there a little more easily, right? It's easier to spot the outliers that do fit your target and bring them into your fold. And so you're absolutely right. The competition for high quality, good content is probably as low as it's ever been, because a lot of those high quality people have left.
And I've seen some people.
I think that's a really interesting point, which is there may be an opportunity but it does predicate believing what you just said, which is that Twitter will survive. Do you buy the argument? Let me ask you this. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about the argument that what Elon is doing is actually purposeful, because what he's trying to do is drive down the perceived value of the company so much that the banks want to just sell him the debt at pennies on the dollar so that he can buy back all that debt and basically take the entire company private with no debt.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I don't know I don't know if I can believe any of this. I mean, we were talking, we were on a webinar yesterday together where I pitched the idea that I think it might ultimately be a digital payments platform because of the fact that Twitter as a media company, a media business model, cannot survive. Can't survive the debt. Definitely. I mean, they could quadruple their revenue and profit right now, and still they wouldn't have enough to grow into that valuation.
That's right.
So what is it going to be? And who knows? Who? I mean, he might be working on something. He might be an evil genius. He might not be an idiot. He might have a second. I don't know if he does. I still look at this as his little pet project. That he was bored. He was bored. I mean, as exciting as things are happening at Tesla and the Boring Company and SpaceX, that the man was bored and is like, let's do this. I like this. I like getting all this attention. I want this as my pet project, and who cares what happens to it? So as long as he can service the debt and doesn't go under with it, he can do whatever he wants with it.
Right. And that, to me, is just as equally as plausible because there's been other reporting from other employees, ex-employees at SpaceX, Tesla. I haven't seen anything from the Boring Company necessarily, but that have said that Elon is really in over his head at this point in those companies where he doesn't really understand the engineering or the things that are happening. They're not things that he can control or really understand. Mm-hmm. And so this would make sense then that those companies are largely running without his direction in most cases. And so this would be something that would be literally when I was a kid, my parents would buy me toys, but I basically would pull all the pots and pans out of the drawer and bang on the pots and pans. Those were my toys that I preferred. It was, it's that kind of thing, right? You have a 3-year-old in the middle of the kitchen and they don't play with the trucks or the car set or the, blocks that you buy them. They pull out the pots and pans and start using the wooden spoons to make drums out of the pots and pans. That's kind of what he's doing with Twitter.
If you look at this rationally, and if you believe that some of these short-term reactions won't completely kill Twitter, it's not a horrible idea to lay off 90% of your staff and see what breaks. You don't know. He doesn't know.
Don't care
if he's willing to make that.
If you don't care that, to make that work, you have to believe that you can service the debt, right? In other words, you have to believe that you're going to service the debt yourself, or that something good is going to happen very quickly, because you can't break something to the point of pulling out half the revenue and have the banks own the debt and force you into bankruptcy.
Well, take the revenue side. Let's just look at all the shenanigans that are going on at Twitter right now. So he wants to make quick decisions, right? Of course, that's all he's doing is making decisions from the hip. He doesn't know. He doesn't know the inner workings of Twitter. He doesn't know all the politics. He doesn't know anything. To find that out, you need at least 6 months, probably more, and many, many meetings and a lot of time to figure that out. He doesn't want to take that time. So what do?
Right.
You get rid of almost everybody. And then now we're seeing in real time what's breaking. So he's shortening that cycle. Now, again, we could make a case that's horrible and it's killing the brand of Twitter and he's losing advertisers. But put that to the side for a second. He's got so much information that he would not have had he waited. So from that standpoint, he's able to move much quicker on some of these things than he would have been before. That's my case. If you like that kind of management, which I don't, I'm not for that kind of management. I like to have meetings. I like to talk to people. I like to get the sentiment overall, what's going on. I don't just want to say, you're all gone, and then you wait a week and see what happens. What breaks? So we're seeing that in real time. It's not an unheard of strategy.
It's not. You're right there, but not
a safe
again.
strategy.
I come back to the simplest answer is probably the right one. I just don't see this as some sort of complex. Somebody said it well. I don't know who it was that said it, but they said Elon always wants to make you think that he's playing chess when he's playing, checkers, but he's actually just, trying to get blocks into a square hole, right? I mean, it's not, the simplest answer is probably the easiest and most correct, which is he doesn't know what he's doing.
It's so funny. My youngest used to adore Elon, and then really started to look into how his companies were built and found out that, I mean, and all this was done legally, but most of the cash that Tesla and some of the other companies were able to accumulate came from government grants, government subsidies. And he said, if without the government, Elon wouldn't have been able to build any of this stuff. And I said, well, okay, right. That's fine. A lot of people do that. He's playing by the rules. He's getting the grants. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
So, and people have to say that he wasn't necessarily the mastermind behind PayPal either. That Peter Thiel, I think you mentioned this on one of the shows before, that was anxious to get him out of there. So, yeah. I don't know. Whatever. It's just, it is a dumpster fire. We are watching it real time. It's very interesting. Just like I think we talked about this before. Like, Elon's all excited that so many people are active on the platform, and somebody else responded to this and said, "Yeah, when my house is on fire, all my neighbors come to watch it. Yeah. I get a lot of attention right. when my house is on fire."
Right. Yeah,
that's what we're saying.
Well, interestingly, and this gets us to this nice segue to our next story here. One of the things that could threaten his ability to turn this thing around is that people are finding viable alternatives. Certainly, I've been experimenting a bit with Mastodon and enjoying that very much, I have to say. It feels very much like the early days of Twitter, with some notable exceptions, which I won't go into here. But the second thing is that there's a new company. We talked about it at one point, the launch of it anyway, on the show, called Post News, but it's getting a lot of traction. And the headline we'll link to is from TechCrunch, and basically they got some money. Post News, a Twitter alternative, gets funding from A16Z, which, by the way, A16Z, I believe, was a big supporter of Twitter as well, so they seem to be hedging their bets a bit.
Was A16Z involved in any of this FTX stuff? They seem to have slid around that.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure they had.
I'm sure they had something in it, somewhere. But there's some.
There's so much hinkiness with that whole thing.
I see Mr. Wonderful's been going, from Shark Tank. He's going down with this because he had a big investment, and a lot of people
huge investment. Yeah,
that's crazy. He's not Mr. Wonderful anymore.
That kid fooled everybody. I mean, that's a whole.
Well, I didn't see any. I mean, as we record this, I didn't see any of it, but I believe he was live on. What is it, Good Morning America or whatever? I don't know. Somebody did a live interview with.
I think it's the New York Times.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah.
And everyone was commenting on it, like, why isn't this guy in jail?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Right. Well, you got to figure his lawyers were like, yeah, now's not the time for you to do a keynote, my friend. But
it's so. I think the thing that I saw on CoinDesk, it's something like he's down. He's completely broken. Has one credit card left.
Right. Well, that wasn't. I mean, I'm sure his funds have been. I would think that the bankruptcy judge has frozen his accounts. I would think.
I would hope. Yeah. I would hope so. But wow, this is a. I mean, he was one of the top 100 wealthiest people on paper, at least in the world, and now not. And now not that. The opposite. He's on the opposite side of that.
Well, the fascinating. I've heard a wild statistic that said basically, Bear Stearns during the 2008-2009 crisis went down in a week, and FTX went down in a week. But the difference is that Bear Stearns had been around for 30 years, and FTX had been alive for 3.
Yeah,
and it's just an incredibly supernova story.
Although we mentioned this a few weeks ago, it is worth saying that the money involved in this is absolutely significant, but it's nothing like what happened during the Great Recession. None of
a lot of it is are valuations, not actual
very small.
money.
I mean, the entire market capitalization of the cryptocurrency market is like $600 billion. Right. I mean, so it's that's a big number, but when you look at it, I mean, it's 1% of the entire financial system. Not so big. So,
yeah.
anyways.
Anyway, back to our story on news, Post News. The article opens up by saying it seems like Post News launched overnight. Well, because it's kind of did. Unlike Mastodon, Hive, Social, or other existing social networks being flooded with dissatisfied Twitter users, Post News has emerged within the last 2 weeks. The platform was rushed into a live beta since its team wanted to go public in a time when the chaos of Elon's leadership was front and center. And Post News has had some similar basic functions to Twitter. You make posts, you like and repost other people's posts, and you follow interesting accounts. Yet in its beta stage, it still lacks basic functions like direct messaging, a native app, and accessibility features like adding alt text to images, sparking concerns for some users, the company has said. Post News is trying to capitalize on the virtual water cooler for journalists side of Twitter. The platform describes itself as a place to access premium news content without subscriptions or ads. News publishers and independent writers are encouraged to share their articles on Post News under a paywall. The idea is that this would allow users to pay micropayments, basically, for individual articles from a variety of news sources. It's an alternative or a supplement to paying for individual subscriptions to a specific news source. I have not signed up for an account yet, but I know some people who are enjoying it very, very much. And I heard an interview with the CEO, who is the former CEO of Waze, by the way, the traffic app, and it sounds really interesting. I don't know what you think.
I signed up. I'm on the waiting list. I'm 201,000. It seems like a lot. I'm in a very long line, single file line to get in. So hopefully I'll get some access to it and we can have some feedback on what the heck's going on. It's interesting if you look at what Mastodon now, they say, has 500,000 users. You're one of them. Hive is up to 1 million. You've got this one that has a couple 100,000 apparently, and a huge waiting list. And it reminds me of, this is early social when you had MySpace and Friendster and 1,000 other things launch. And so we're going through one of those phases. We just talked about this. Disney goes through this phase. We're seeing this happen with these types of social apps. And maybe Twitter is spurring this on, but I think you could make a case that we're seeing all these new apps come up. And then in 4 or 5 years, you'll see all this consolidation again. So who's the winner? So I think you got a year or two of some of these companies to prove themselves and build an audience and monetize. I don't know. I mean, of course I have to get into the whole Post News thing, but the pay for the microtransaction subscription payment that they're looking at, the model, I'm intrigued with that model. Like if people are going to pay for this microtransaction subscription, I don't even know what that looks like. I'm just reading the article here. I want to see what this is. If people will pay for this, it looks like the idea of this would allow users to pay for individual articles from a variety of news sources. So basically, you have your feed that you can probably get a lot of free content, but then you pay for other people's content, right? That's what I'm reading. I don't know.
That's right. Yeah, it's micropayments is how they're going to monetize things, where you don't have to. One of the things that I heard in the interview with the CEO, which I thought was just a really interesting idea. Micropayments are certainly nothing new and have failed in so many ways for news and content oriented websites in the past. But what they've talked about may actually work because it's an aggregation of news sources. So it's not like you have to have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or whatever, unless you actually read those things every day. For the more casual news consumer, you could pay a penny or 5 cents or whatever the take rate is for a particular story, and get an article from a trusted news source like Wall Street Journal or New York Times or Washington Post or LA Times or whoever it is. And that means the publisher gets paid for their article. And he did some math during the interview that sort of how that worked out. I think it was 1 penny. I may get this number wrong, but I think he said 1 penny or 10 cents. Maybe it was 10 cents. 10 cents for an article view is the same as a $10 CPM or something like that. I'm not good enough with math to do that quickly in my head, but that's interesting. That's an interesting model for sure, where you can consume news in a trusted way from people who build trust by sharing good things, because he talked about how your reputation and the algorithm would be tuned in a way that the more trust and shares you get are equated to the amount of people. So if you start, sharing stuff that isn't trusted or is notified as fake news or whatever, you'll first lose the ability for everybody to see your content. Then you'll lose the ability for your friends to see your content. And then ultimately you get, sort of siloed off. It's, I think, a very fascinating way to build in. And the verification process is, you actually have to go verify yourself and those sorts of things. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Just, as we close this one up, back to Twitter, you could see a model like that working on Twitter where it's not pay for how many followers you have or just pay a monthly fee. You could just pay for the number of posts that you have. Say 1 to 10 is free. Any more than that, you're on this subscription level of $9 a month. Any more than that, that would cut down on a lot of spam if you had to pay for a post. Not replies. Just anyways, in this type of a social network model, to your point, I think microtransactions may work. I think people might be open to it in 2023. So
yeah, and we'll see if it starts to bleed into B2B as well, because I've not ever been one of those users on social media, especially Twitter, to be, I don't share much about politics or news or topical things that aren't related to marketing, et cetera. I pretty much use social media either as a very personal thing to share pictures of the beach or my family or whatever, or to be sharing articles around marketing stuff. I don't comment on politics or the elections or what's going on in the world like a lot of people do. Like a lot of people mix that up. So I think it's really a platform for those people, those people who actually really enjoy getting into issues and debating and talking about them and all those kinds of things. I'll be very interested to see if, not dissimilar from the way like Axios gets into subtopics like media and marketing and business, if we might start to see Post News get into communities or subtopics around business issues, sports, et cetera, where you could, where you can basically build a following around very niche topics. That might be really the more interesting alternative to Twitter for folks like me.
Yeah. We'll see. It's definitely going to be, I don't know. I think it's ultimately going to be winner take all, but you're going to see a lot of these.
I think that's right.
I think for a while we're going to see a bunch, and we're going to probably have another one next week and another one in 2 weeks, and then you're going to see them fight off and see, and someone's going to gobble up another one, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Last story before we get to Rants and Raves really quickly here is around Pinterest, the social media network that gets no love these days. And Pinterest has decided to end its creator rewards program. Our apologies in advance. This is coming from The Information, which is you need to be a subscriber to actually read the whole article here, but we'll talk.
And I've got one from social media today that's free, and I'll put that in the show notes for people as well.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
So Pinterest is ending its creator rewards program, says the article, which offered cash bonuses when creators completed goals like hitting certain engagement metrics. The Information here, being the publication, is the first to report this. It's the latest example of a social media company pruning initiatives designed to attract creators as tech companies rethink products in the face of an economic downturn. The digital scrapbooking service launched the test program with select creators about a year ago, and I think we actually covered it on the show. After the program's conclusion on Wednesday, it will pay a one-time bonus to creators in the program who participated in at least one reward goal in August, September, or October. A Pinterest spokesperson said that the company has declined to share how much it was giving away in bonuses, but it's ending the program nonetheless. I think this is less interesting around Pinterest than it is sort of the broader sort of turn away from content creator enablement that these social media networks are starting to put into play. What is your content creator, content entrepreneur guy? What do you think about this?
Real quick, just on Pinterest, you talk about it not getting any love. I talked with Kate All, who's speaking at Creator Economy Expo on Pinterest, and she says that Pinterest is the best way to drive leads for brand. Like, of course, she's pro Pinterest. I'm not on Pinterest, so I don't know. But there are a lot of people that are doing really well with Pinterest.
Oh, sure. E-commerce brands are crushing it.
It's just, if you're not in that space, you don't know. Your point is exactly where I would take this. The easy money that creators, I don't want to say it's easy, but the easier money that these creators were getting from the platforms is gone. Yeah. And it's not coming back for years. And all these creator awards programs are just to try to get these creators on the platform, and hopefully they can get them to stick by learning to monetize themselves or some of the other programs that are out there. So I guess that's what you're going to see the end. This is going to be a domino effect. More and more, you're going to see Snapchat do it, TikTok, all their creator awards programs are all going to go away. Bye-bye. They're done. So, because they don't need to do it. They're getting those creators on the platforms anyways to build their audiences, and then it's up to the creator themselves to learn how to monetize, as it always has been.
I think we talked about this. We were the guest on a webinar, you and I, this week for Carlos Doherty's Martech event. And, we talked about this 2022 perhaps being a pivotal year for how social media is going to be viewed. I think this is another data point or a waypoint in that. I really do believe that this year might be the tipping point for how a fundamental sort of sea change in the way that social media is seen. What do you think? I
think that you and I have talked forever about rented land but nobody seemed to listen. Yeah. It seems like people.
But I mean, even a bigger sea change than that, right? I mean,
well, what do you mean by sea? I mean, I think that
just in the, you see the sort of disruption of TikTok, and I think I'm coming around to your point of view that TikTok is days are numbered from a regulatory standpoint. So something fundamental has to happen there. Facebook / Meta / Instagram fundamentally changing into becoming content discovery platforms rather than sharing. And there's certainly pros debates to be had about the wisdom of that. Twitter going through its dumpster fire, new social media coming online built around the idea of trust and closer networks. And perhaps the flip side of that coin is that even more tribal and in some ways than the public quote unquote town square of some of the other programs. I wonder if looking at all these things, social media used to be the platform that you would either go on to try and become an influencer or a content creator to build your entrepreneurial business on, and much to our, sort of saying warnings and cautionary tales, don't build your house on rented land and all of that, but now seem to be transforming. The entire idea of social media seems to be transforming into something else. I'm not smart enough to know what that something else is just yet, but it feels to me like there's a fundamental change happening across the board, right? There's a disruption happening.
I would agree with that. To maybe what you just said, I'm not sure exactly what it is. We know for sure that social media is good. The communication between people seems to be going away in favor of content discovery, and TikTok has made that business model very clear. We know that's happening, and Instagram and Facebook are trying to copy that. So they're not promoting, hey, we want you to communicate and comment or whatever. No, they just want to throw as much content as they can against you because that helps their business model. Done. So I don't know what that means, but then you have a whole, my kids they communicate via Snapchat all the time. They're using that as a messenger service. I don't know what that means. I think we're in definitely a transition period of what it means. Well, specifically for creators, I mean, more than ever before, I think you have to make sure that you have a business model in place where you don't rely on these things. That's the thing that I'm scared about. When I talk to any creator, it's like, oh, you are over reliant on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. I mean, I sent you that article, Becky Aitchen, who's one of our never-ending ticket holders for CEX. She sent an article. She teaches at University of South Dakota, and they're not allowed to use TikTok as a government agency, as a university, as a government agency.
Yeah.
They basically, so we're starting to see this stuff happen. It's weird. A lot of nationalism is creeping in all over the place.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, in a way, more trust is getting built into it, but the way that trust is getting built into it is to, in some ways, make us even more segmented from each other than before.
Good point.
Right? Not forcing us into the town square, forcing us into pockets of groups.
And I think your point yesterday was that, 2023 is going to be the year of first party data. And I sort of talked about, yes, that's why we're going to see this continuation of the email newsletter be more important than ever before. And the opt-in to these personalized content experiences. And email is where we have the most control right now. So that's where we're going.
Yeah. Interesting. Fascinating. All right. Well, folks, it is now time for our rants and raves section. Before we get to those rants, where Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave that makes us feel like Bob Iger or makes us feel like we're going to sell Disney to Apple. Before we get to that, you can get all the goodness of this wonderful podcast show notes, everything we talked about today, and believe me, go visit the website for that Mashable article. It is, or just Google it if you want to, but go to the podcast show notes if you want. It's there. You should just do it. You can listen to any of the other 351 episodes that we've got on our wonderful website. That, of course, is thisoldmarketing.site. It couldn't be any simpler, thisoldmarketing.site. Of course, the Twitter questions, the Twitter stories, everything. I am still monitoring Twitter for those hashtags. Hashtag us up. Give us those story ideas. We need those story ideas. We love those story ideas. And there we go. Okay, so rants and raves. Do you want to go first?
Let me
Shall I
go first.
I have a very quick commentary. But
this is... So basically, I had the 100th edition of the Random newsletter, as I've been producing this for almost 3 years now. That's my joepolizzi.com newsletter. And I put in a number of 10 things. There's 10 best ways to do this, this, and this. I want to read one of them to you, but I want you to choose. So I'm going to give you some choices. You tell me which one you want me to read. All right? So one is the 10 best ways to get content ideas. The 10 plus things I actually want to do, open-ended, whatever I want to do. The 10 must-read books or series, or something everyone should do for 10 days. What of those things do you want me to read on this show right now?
The 10 book ideas.
10 book ideas. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
So, not in any particular order, but take it for whatever it's worth. Number 1, Stranger in a Strange Land, Robert Heinlein, greatest novel, in my opinion, ever. A Gentleman in Moscow, Amar Tolls. Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir. Amazing sci-fi, way better than The Martian. Matthew Corbett series of books from Robert McCammon. It's early 1700s mystery. Can't recommend it highly enough. The Carl series from Hank Green. If you haven't read it, if you got kids, they'll love it as well. Amos Decker series, my favorite series from David Baldacci. It's the Memory Man series, worth the read. I like the Monkey Wrench series of books from P.J. Tracy. It's an IT thriller. Ready Player One. Of course, I know you like that one too. The Big Short, Michael Lewis. On Writing by Stephen King, the best book on writing that's ever been created, in my opinion. A Man Called Ove from Frederick Bachman, and you will cry if you read this, Robert. The Kate Burkholder series of books. It's from Linda Castillo. That's basically Amish suspense thrillers. They're so good, though. And then anything by Blake Crouch. So that's my list of books. You read one of those, it'll change your life. But I don't know. Have you any of those? You read some of those, I know. I don't know if you have.
I've read most of those.
That's amazing. We have a lot of overlap there in our reading.
Yeah, we do. I mean, you're a little more well-read when it comes to the science fiction stuff than I am. But the Heinlein book, I mean, come on. I mean, Stranger in a Strange Land if you have any interest in science fiction, you have to
read that. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
That is
so. If you haven't read it yet,
required reading.
And it's a very, I guess you call it a chauvinistic book. It was written in the 40s, or a long time ago.
I mean, it's chauvinistic in the same way that James Bond is chauvinistic, in the same way that basically lots of 50s and 60s books were
for that time. But anyways, okay, so that's the thing, and thank you to everyone. I've been getting some great responses from the newsletter, so thanks for everyone for their support. And then I want to hear you have a rant.
It's not really a rant. It's not really a rant. It's just just maybe some commentary here. I don't even know what it is really. I mean, just a news item really struck me. and it's about Hollywood. It's shocking. I know that I would talk about such things, but so Ben Affleck, who is having a really good year. I mean, J-Lo and the whole thing. I mean, he's having just a really
that's really all you have to say.
As opposed to some of the years he's had over the last couple, right? COVID has been good for Ben Affleck.
It's a good life. Just say J-Lo.
It's a good life.
I mean, how do you one up that? You can't.
Yeah, you don't.
So.
Marrying J-Lo is a thing. Anyway. Yeah,
the understatement of the year.
Anyway,
okay.
He has pitched a new company called Artists Equity as a new model to reward creators. And this is what we'll link to in the show notes is from Axios. And the news article, as it says, is basically Ben Affleck has said Wednesday, meaning like literally this week, that the first project by his and Matt Damon, of course, his longtime friend and production company partner, Artists Equity, are going to make an upcoming movie about the Air Jordan brand, and that aligns with his business's mission. Interesting. That caught my attention, of course, as you might suspect, in content marketing and all the kinds of things that are matters there. The Hollywood duo, the article says, is trying to change how the industry pays film crews, providing fair and equitable compensation to everyone involved, while also making movies that are of high quality and have commercial appeal. Basically, it mirrors many of the themes that we're working with around the way we look at celebrities, said Affleck, and he was interviewed for the New York Times Deal book. Basically, Affleck and Damon announced earlier that their new company, backed by a minimum of $100 million in financing from Redbird Capital, is going to create all this wonderful new content and have a new sort of equity-based payment structure that are going to be, handling everything from streaming to all kinds of things in terms of the way that this company is structured. Interesting, I thought, fascinating. And the first thing I thought of was United Artists. And for those of you who don't have a history in Hollywood and how the production companies came about, back in 1918, Charlie Chaplin basically was having lots and lots of problems with all of the productions and couldn't get the projects he wanted to get made, couldn't get the big studios at the time. So he teamed up with Mary Pickford, who, of course, was the equivalent female star of the time, and Douglas Fairbanks, another big star, and they formed a company that would become known as United Artists, which you may have heard of because it lasted into the 70s. And the interesting thing was with United Artists, it was almost exactly what we're talking about here. United Artists in the 20s was a response to the way that creators were getting paid, that they were under contract, that it was these onerous contracts. They couldn't get their projects made, and they wanted an independent company where artists were responsible for the content. And I just thought the similarities were fascinating and striking to me. The interesting thing here, and this is, I guess, the commentary part, was it didn't work very well. And the reason it didn't work very well was because it's really hard to get a bunch of artists in one room and all agree on a business plan. And they had the exact same problems because everybody was required to make like 5 movies a year, and you were supposed to pitch and you were supposed to contribute and you were supposed to have this wonderful egalitarian sort of thing where you would, be equals and, star in each other's movies. And of course, that's not the way artists work. And it's not the way businesses work. And so a lot of arguments happened, a lot of infighting happened, people quit, people came in, came out. And the company really was not financially terribly well successful ultimately. And then it was bought and sold like 4 times. And then the model completely changed back to the traditional model. So I just think it's really interesting to see in this day and age, Affleck and Damon trying to do something very similar. I think it can work in this day and age, but I think there's a real cautionary tale to look at here. And I'm just fascinated with this business model to see if they can actually truly make this into a new kind of creator-driven company or if it's just not possible. So I just thought it was interesting.
I think it's not totally the same, but the Taylor Swift moment with Ticketmaster where you get a call on, hey, you need a creator, musician in this case, driven ticketing system. I think you're going to see more artists that have more power and more of a platform being able to leverage these types of things. So I think we're in, again, one of those patterns where we're going to see more and more of this happen. And I'm curious to see how it ends up. So
yeah, absolutely. 100%. Where you got next week?
Yeah, we were just talking about it before.
Oh, you're going out of town.
I'll be in Belgium, Brussels, Belgium. I'm speaking at the BAM Congress. I'm very excited about this next week. So I haven't been to Brussels in years, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing many of my European friends out there. So I'll be making that trip over the pond. How about you, sir?
I am home. It's raining here, which is lovely. We're happy about that. And then I'm off for my anniversary this coming weekend. Yeah, 30 years with my beloved. Thank you very much. And we're going to go out and get a couple of days away from the world and go hide away up in the mountains and, do what married couples do after 30 years, which is not a lot. So there is that.
That is quite a number. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you very much for that. All right. Well, that's it, folks. We will see you again next week. And just remember, it is your story to tell. Tell it well. See you next week on This Old Marketing.